Programs are a lot more interesting when you can interact with the user. Maybe get some input and make some choices based upon the input, and then give some feedback to the user. We're going to look at how we can do that by using some functions that are available in browsers, and they're called prompt, which allows you to get input, and alert, which allows you to give information back to the user. So far, we've been using scripting shells, and scripting shells execute the code immediately as soon as you press enter. Well, if we want to write a program that interacts with the user, we don't want to have to type in a new line of code after the user has that interaction. So we're going to look at a JavaScript runner in order to write our prompt and alert. A JavaScript runner is a tool that allows you to type in a set of statements that are written in JavaScript and that they won't execute until you press a run button. So here's an example of a JavaScript runner that's available on this LMU website. It's been there available ever since I started teaching JavaScript, but we actually don't have control over the fact of whether that's available or not because it's provided by a different university. So I'm also going to provide you with a JavaScript runner that you can download and run on your machine. But it's very important that you don't post this JavaScript runner on a website because that opens yourself up to security attacks. If it's locally on your machine, then no one can run it except you. If they've already gotten to your disk drive on your machine, they don't need a JavaScript runner to attack your machine. But if you put this on a website, people could write malicious JavaScript and then click on run. So you want to be careful about tools that just run any random JavaScript that can be typed in. However, for learning, it's a great way to be able to easily test and write JavaScript. Let's start with a function called prompt. You've already been using functions in the processing.js when you did things like ellipse or text. You use those functions to draw on the canvas in Khan Academy. Well, here we're going to use the prompt that is going to create a pop-up box that is going to allow the user to enter some information. So let's start out with typing in the name of our function. It's prompt. Prompt takes one parameter, that's a string, and so let's just put in something like hello students. Notice I put quotation marks around hello students because it is a string, and that is what's going to be passed in, which then pops up, and that string appears hello students. The prompt expects input, so it gives you a box to type in some information, and then you can either say OK or cancel. If prompt is looking for input, well, then maybe we should be asking the user for input in our message. So instead of saying just hello students, maybe we should just say, hello, what is your name? Well, and the question mark should go inside that quotation mark. So if we ask the user what their name is, then when we click on the run here, the window pops up and it says, hello, what is your name? And now the user knows what to type in that box. Well, my name is Jocelyn, so I'll type in Jocelyn and say, OK. It hasn't been a very interesting program yet because even though it prompts and asks, what is your name? It doesn't do anything with that information. We only have one line of code. So let's add another line of code. Let's add our new function that is called alert. Let's alert a message. And And let's say, welcome to Introduction to Programming. Now the prompt is asking the user for some information and gives you a chance to give a message to prompt the user to let them know what you want for that information. Whereas the alert is simply a message to the user. So when we run it, we have 2 lines of code here. So the first thing that's going to execute is that what is your name again that we've already seen. So I can put in my name here. And then the next line of code that executes is the alert. Welcome to Introduction to Programming. And you can see that that message has been given back to the user. Now it'd be a lot more interesting if we could use the information that we got from that prompt in our alert so that we can actually tell the person who put their name in there. We can use that name to address the person, to welcome that person specifically to Intro to Programming. If we want to save that information typed into the prompt box, then we need to store it in a variable. We create a variable by typing var and then giving it some name. Now this variable cannot have quotation marks around it, because that would make it a string, and then it wouldn't be a name of a place in memory. So we just make up some name, and then we're going to say, in memory, when I refer to this name, I want you to get this information. So I could say, you know, that my name is Jocelyn right away here. But that would only work for me, because my name is Jocelyn, and it's very unlikely that any of the other students' name will also be Jocelyn. May happen one day, but certainly not everyone will be named Jocelyn. So instead of saying that we want it to be a string right away of Jocelyn, we want to assign that memory location the result of the prompt. Well, we do that by taking that function prompt and placing it right after that equal sign that means assignment. So we're going to say create a variable, and we're going to call it student's name, and we're going to prompt, hello, what is your name? Now we can use the alert to show us what was put in that name. So we can alert student's name. Now notice there's a difference here. Student's name does not have any quotation marks around it, whereas welcome to Introduction to Programming does have quotation marks around it. Well, what that means is that if there are no quotation marks around it, it says, oh, did you tell me that you wanted to store something in memory at this name? Yeah, I'm going to go see and check if you stored anything in memory with this name, student's name. And if you did, then I'm going to pull that out of memory and show it to you. So when we run this, we're going to prompt, hello, what is your name? And I'm going to type in Jocelyn again. And when I say OK, that information is going to be placed into the memory that we've given the label student's name. So the next line executes to alert that student name, and it's going to give the same thing that I typed in back. And then we have a third line of code that's going to say, welcome to Introduction to Programming. Let's run it again and put in a different name. Put in Andrew. Now, Andrew is going to be the result of the prompt, and that's going to be stored into student's name. So the alert that follows is going to show us Andrew. And then welcome to Introduction to Programming follows. now what happens if we make a little mistake here and we put quotation marks around it? When we put quotation marks around it, that means give me the string. So it's going to give me exactly what's inside that string, just like it did in Welcome to Programming. So when I run it, I can type in my name nicely, but it's going to alert exactly the text, the string that I gave it here with student's name. In order for it to check in memory for some variable that you gave the label student's name, you cannot have those quotation marks. Once you put the quotation marks around it, it says, okay, literally give me those characters inside the quotation marks. So if we take those back off, now we're not saying literally give me those characters. It's saying, oh, go see if you can find student's name somewhere in memory and give me the value in there. So if we put something in there again, now we're back to the program working. Well, it'd be kind of nice to have that welcome right with the student's name. Well, we can do that through concatenation. We can add a plus sign and say, add the student's name to the welcome. So now when we run it, we can see, what's your name? We can see that it's stored that name into the variable student's name. And now we can see, welcome to Introduction to Programming, Jocelyn. Well, that's not exactly what we wanted, is it? Programs are very particular about every little character, and you have to tell the computer exactly which characters you want. So if we wanted a space between the G from the end of programming and the J that starts in Jocelyn, we have to tell the computer that's what we want. So we have to put that space in. Now if we run it, we get the name repeated, and we also get our complete message, welcome to Introduction to Programming, Jocelyn.